The grand conclave hall of the Galactic Council was a symphony of cold, polished light and softer shadows, designed to instill tranquility and order. Here, beneath a dome that displayed a real-time tapestry of 1,000 stars, the fate of civilizations was decided not with weapons, but with words, treaties, and impeccably logical accords. The assembled species represented the galaxy's pinnacle of enlightened society. There were the Vlani, slender and silver-skinned, their minds mathematical wonders who had calculated the paths of empires millennia before they rose. The Grunther, massive and stony, embodied patience, their decisions taking years to formulate but lasting for centuries. The ethereal Silith, beings of shimmering energy, communed with the quantum fields, seeking harmony in all things. To them, conflict was a relic, a noise in the beautiful silence of cosmic order. And then there was the new item on the agenda, humanity. Ambassador Kthar of the Vlani, his voice a modulated hum, addressed the assembly. The Terran situation is an anomaly. They have expanded with a speed that defies prudent models. They settle on volatile worlds, mine asteroids deemed too hazardous, and their communications networks are a chaotic storm of conflicting data, art, and emotion. They are destabilizing the serene frontiers of the Orion Spur. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a bustling human orbital dock. Ships of disparate, rugged design zipped about, not with the graceful, synchronized patterns of conclave vessels, but with a frenetic, seemingly reckless energy. The council members observed with a mixture of disdain and pity. "They are children," rumbled Borel of the Grunther, the sound like grinding tectonic plates. "Loud, impulsive children. They must be guided into the fold, for their own safety and for the stability of the region." The proposal was simple, logical, and benevolent by all conclave standards. The Orion Spur would be designated a stewardship zone. Humanity would cease its uncontrolled expansion. In return, the Council would provide advanced technology, medical knowledge, and a structured path to eventual provisional membership. All they had to do was sign. A human delegate, Ambassador Evelyn Reed, was summoned. She stood before them, a solitary figure in a simple dark suit, surrounded by the towering, alien grandeur of the conclave. She listened politely as Kthar explained the generous offer, the absolute necessity of it. When he finished, the expectant silence was palpable. Reed adjusted her glasses, a gesture none of the aliens understood. "Thank you for the offer," she said, her voice clear and firm in the universal translator. "But on behalf of the people of Earth and her colonies, I must decline." The silence that followed was no longer expectant. It was shocked, then cold. "Decline?" Kthar's luminescent eyes pulsed. "You decline? This is not a commercial treaty open to haggling. This is the ordained path to civilization." "With respect," Reed replied, "my people have our own path." A wave of agitated telepathic frequencies washed from the Silith. "The harmony is broken. The signal is defiance. It is noise." Borel leaned forward, his stone form casting a long shadow over Reed. "You do not comprehend. Your species is young. You are emotional, irrational. You see this as an imposition. It is protection. Without structure, you will fracture. You will burn yourselves out on the anvil of dead stars." "We've danced with extinction before," Reed said, a hint of something unreadable. Was it a smile? On her lips. "It's an old partner of ours." The council descended into a controlled panic. Subharmonies of dismay fluttered through the air. Logistical projections, meant to account for minor territorial disputes, spiraled into nonsense. The Vlani model shattered. The humans were not behaving according to the axioms of self-preservation and logical benefit. They refused the lifeline. Kthar's voice turned sharp. "This is unprecedented insolence. Do you understand the consequences? The Conclave controls the magneto-gravitic lane networks. Your ships will be limited to sublight crawls. Trade with emerging species will be forbidden. You will be alone, in the quiet dark, until you come to your senses." Reed met his gaze. "We've been alone in the dark before, too, and we learned to make our own light." She turned and walked out of the hall. The great doors sealed behind her with a final, resonant thud that echoed in the stunned silence. The Conclave expected desperation. They monitored the human networks for signs of societal collapse, for protests against Ambassador Reed's folly, for the inevitable, pleading request for renewed talks. They detected none. Instead, they detected activity, but not the kind they understood. The Vlani surveillance AIs reported a surge in seemingly nonsensical transmissions. Not coherent data packets, but compressed bursts of cultural archives, Music spanning millennia, from primal drums to symphonic rock, vast libraries of literature, holovids of art and cinema, the complete works of every human philosopher, comedian, and poet. These were being broadcast on repeat, on every frequency, toward the conclave's own core worlds and their member species. "It is data pollution," Thar exclaimed in a council session. "A crude attempt at psychological warfare. They are bombarding our citizens with nonsense." A junior Grunther analyst, who had spent cycles quietly studying these noise bursts, spoke up, her voice hesitant. "Respected elders, it is not nonsense. It is context. They are not sending arguments." Meanwhile, the human frontier did not crumble. Without access to the fast lanes, human engineers did something terrifyingly pragmatic. They began implementing a technology the conclave had long deemed theoretically possible, but practically insane: short-range, sequential warp hops. It was like crossing a raging river by leaping from one unstable, crumbling rock to another. It required insane calculations, terrifying risk tolerance, and ships rugged enough to withstand constant spatial shear. Human vessels, nicknamed rockhoppers, began appearing on the edges of conclave space, not with weapons, but with holds full of strange, vibrant goods. They traded not with council members, but directly with the subjects of the council, the minor species, the frontier colonies who found conclave rule benign but stifling. The humans brought them plants from Earth that could grow in acidic soil. They shared simple, robust engineering solutions for atmospheric processors. They played music that made their counterparts feel things they couldn't name. They showed holovids of humans falling down, laughing, getting back up. They showed stories of loss, love, and impossible triumph. A quiet, cultural seepage began at the conclave's foundations. The crisis point came from an unexpected vector. A parasitic crystalline entity, known as the Xylos Plague, began consuming a Grunther frontier world. It was a known if rare cosmic hazard. Conclave protocol was clear: quarantine, study, and if necessary, a controlled stellar lance to sterilize the planet. It was logical: the loss of one world to save 100. The Grunther mourned, but accepted. The order was given. Before the conclave fleet could enact the sterilization, a single, battered human rockhopper, the unyielding Verdant, dropped out of its jerky, sequential warp at the edge of the quarantine zone. It ignored all hails, all warnings of extreme biohazard. From the conclave flagship, they watched, horrified and fascinated. They saw the small human ship dive into the planet's toxin-choked atmosphere. They saw it land in the middle of a spreading crystalline forest. "They are suiciding," whispered a Silith. "Their grief for our loss has broken them." But then they saw the humans emerge in environment suits. Not with weapons, with canisters and modified mining tools. Sensor feeds, fuzzy with interference, showed them not fighting the crystal but sampling it. They saw a human get grazed by a growing shard, his suit breached, his crewmate dragging him back to the ship while applying a field dressing in a storm of deadly spores. For 3 solar cycles, the unyielding Verdant was silent. The conclave fleet waited, the stellar lance charged. Boral, the world's fate hanging over him, watched the silent ship on the planetary surface. Then a weak transmission crackled through. It was the human captain, her voice ragged with exhaustion. "Conclave fleet, Xylos isn't a plague. It's not even predatory. It's hungry. It's consuming specific mineral compounds and excreting pure silicon as waste. It's a biological smelter. We've analyzed its reproductive cycle. It's triggered by electromagnetic fields from your deep core mining operations. You're literally ringing the dinner bell for it." She coughed, a wet, human sound. "We've synthesized a counteragent from its own reproductive node. It's a pheromone signal. It tells the crystal the food source is depleted. It goes dormant. Send down your med teams. The Grunther cities are intact, buried under silicon, but intact. You can dig them out." On the bridge of the conclave flagship, Thar stared at the data streaming from the human ship. It was brilliant, elegant, and born not from cold logic, but from a refusal to accept an acceptable loss. These humans had seen a funeral and decided to perform a surgery instead. He looked at Boral. The massive Grunther was trembling, not with grief, but with a shock so profound it cracked his stony composure. His world, his people were not lost. "Why?" Boral's voice was a raw scrape. "You were under no obligation. We were ready to end it. You were told to stay away. Why did you do this?" The human captain's voice came back, weaker but clear. "Because it was there. Because you were going to lose your home. And we know what that feels like. No one should have to feel that if there's another way. Weeks later, Ambassador Evelyn Reed stood once more in the Grand Conclave Hall. The atmosphere was utterly different. The cold light seemed warmer. The silence was thoughtful, not imposing. Before her, on the central dais, was a small, dormant sample of the xylose crystal, and next to it, the vial of human-synthesized counteragent. Kthar spoke, his hum subdued. "We have recalculated. Our models were incomplete. We accounted for logic, for technology, for resource acquisition. We did not account for the variables you introduce." He gestured to the crystal. "You saw a problem to be solved where we saw a statistic to be contained. You looked at a dying world and saw a patient, not a casualty. You were offered a cage of safety and called it a cage. You were offered the quiet and chose instead to make your own magnificent, terrifying, beautiful noise." He paused, the entire council hanging on his words. "We asked for your compliance. You gave us your context. We threatened you with isolation. You responded with a lesson in solidarity. We do not yet understand you, humans, but we now understand that we must." Boral stood, a new lightness in his monumental frame. "The stewardship proposal is withdrawn. We propose instead a new category, partners in curiosity. We will share our lanes. You will share your way of seeing." Reed nodded. "That we can do." As the assembly dissolved into murmurs of tentative agreement, Kthar looked out the great dome at the stars. For 1,000 generations, his people had sought to map, to order, to calm the chaos of existence. They had believed the universe's greatest mystery was its underlying order. Now they had met a species whose greatest strength was not fighting chaos, but dancing with it. A species that could stare into the cold equations of extinction and scribble a hopeful, messy, brilliant footnote in the margin. The galaxy was not a quiet hall to be governed. It was a wild song, and humanity had just taught them all a new verse. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.